Welcome to the Insolvency Law podcast, providing specialist insolvency and debt-related advice for business owners and individuals. For more information on debt recovery, business restructuring, and personal and corporate insolvency, visit our website www.insolvencyandlaw.co.uk or call us now on 020 7504 1300.
Hello and welcome back to the Insolvency and Law podcast. Insolvency and Law is an award-winning consultancy firm specializing in insolvency, debt purchasing, and business rescue. And welcome to another show in our investment series. Before we get into it, I want to remind you to check out our other 3 podcasts that we've done so far, as they are also full of useful information. So today I'll be speaking once again to Director Peter Murray as we cover yet another facet of the investment world. Peter, in our first episodes, we gave listeners an intro into Ponzi schemes. But as we know, there are many different types of investment scams people can fall into other than Ponzi schemes. And the sad truth is that many people invest their pensions, spouses' life insurance, and life savings without really knowing the ins and outs of scams. So, Peter, how are you?
I was about to say that, Tara. Allow me to introduce myself. Yeah, no, I am fine. Welcome back. I am fine. I'm glad to be here. And your question. There are many different types of investment schemes that become scams, bring about hundreds and thousands of victims in England and Wales, sadly. Yeah.
So before we jump into the other types of schemes, could we just again touch briefly on what is a Ponzi/pyramid schemes? What are those? Let's ease into that.
Oh, I suppose the Ponzi/pyramid schemes are the most popular ones. I think they're probably perhaps one of the most oldest of them all, really. And your Ponzi pyramid scheme is whereby your supposed new investors actually pay the interest payments for previous investors. And so we have just the funds just circulate. The funds isn't actually invested in any legitimate investments. So they just go from, the new basically pays out the old. And there comes a time where the investors receiving interest payments, they become greater and greater and greater. And those investors making those investments it's not greater than those who are receiving it. And therefore the investment scheme implodes on itself. And there we have catastrophic loss to those investors.
Yeah. And that can be really anything. You can be selling small parts of something. Supposedly it can be any industry. It's not really just specific to one industry, is it? It could be anything, any product, any service.
Yeah. I mean, usually you tend to find that there is a product being marketed as part of the investment scheme. It could be property, it could be land, it could be wine, it could be pension releases and other unregulated products, such as gold, wine, hotels, parking, storage, you name it, student accommodations. And so basically, the organizers, they basically say, okay, they actually know that there are prospective investors out there that I keep saying they're looking to achieve an above average return. I think anything more than 5%, they'd be quite happy with, because the banks are paying less than 1%. So, these individual investors, they are prepared to look elsewhere for that 5+%. And you have these scheme organizers, would gladly offer them one of their bogus schemes to get involved in.
No, absolutely. And I think maybe focusing in on early pension release is quite an important one to hone in on, because we do see people like investing their entire pensions into things, and sometimes it goes really wrong. I think it's important to be mindful, would you say, of anything that's an early pension release? There's a reason that age is there when it's meant to be released. Would you say so?
Yeah, quite. I would say that, there are some pension releases, entities, which do actually work and, do actually deliver what they say. But in my experience, overwhelming majority of these companies, these pension release products, they tend to end in disaster very, very, very quickly. So don't believe for one moment in time you are transferring your pension pot from a safe, regulated entity, usually an insurance company or pension trustees, into one of these pension release businesses, because it can end very, very quickly for you. Your monies can be lost literally, not necessarily overnight, but very, very quickly, and it will not be possible to recover it.
Oh no, that's devastating. That's absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
So I think it's just key. It's key for people to be aware when they're listening to podcasts like this, just to be aware that what scams exist, so that they can do their due diligence. What we discussed on last week's episode, they can look a bit more into it and make an informed decision. That's all we're really trying to get at with these episodes, is allowing people to have a really informed decision. Because look, I mean, people can be magpies sometimes, can't they?
Yep.
And things look shiny and dazzling, and I think I just sometimes, like you say, Peter, if it's too good, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, really. I mean, we've been involved some years ago. We were involved in quite a few land banking scams where individual investors were duped into buying, plots or parcels of a plot of land, and invariably that land would be green belt, so that land can offer no development potential for any property developer. So there's no value in the land, or very little value in the land, and certainly no appreciation. And these lands are bought off farmers, usually farmland, and they're sold in parcels to unsuspecting investors by saying, pay, £50,000 for this now. And once planning permission is obtained, the value of your £50,000 will quadruple, or worth 4, 5, 6 times much more. And how irresistible. And investors were literally flooding into these opportunities, only to find out months down the road that these opportunities were absolutely worthless.
Wow. And I think that feeds in quite nicely to another type of scam, which is overseas holiday properties, which don't exist. I mean, it's baffling that people can get duped into that, because you think surely you'd want to have gone over to whichever country and have a viewing of sorts of some kind of at least example property. But I suppose they say, oh, we're building it.
Yeah, again, we've had experience with overseas properties, where they may acquire the land and they may start building or start some foundation work, but they don't intend to even go 10% into the physical construction. So, they've got all these really shiny, did you say, Sarah? These
dazzling.
shiny, dazzling brochures.
Yeah.
That shows these apartment as a finished article.
Yeah.
That's what investors see. They see the finished article, and they see that work is in progress, and you are able to buy what we call off plan. So you're able to pick your room, or to pick your apartment or the room that you're going to buy into, what floor, what end of the corridor, etc.
Wow.
And eventually it never does materialize. You tend to find that the company goes bust and investors' monies have disappeared. Very common.
Wow. And you know what, though? I think because a lot of the time these things actually do work out. There's so many incidents where people buy properties that haven't been built yet or fully built, and it's completely fine, and it's all good. So I can see how people can get duped into doing that when it's a scam, because they can't really know. But there is something unnerving about not seeing a property before you buy it, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, do you know what? Funny enough, my nephew bought a property. He actually completed, well, not long ago, and he bought a property, in Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire.
Yeah.
It's part of a new development. He bought it off plan,
Mm-hmm.
Hadn't seen it. Couldn't see it because there was nothing there other than land and construction work. And he even exchanged contracts, and the property still had not been constructed. And eventually he managed to see a property to the one that he was buying, and only following completion, when he actually collected the keys, did he actually see the property for the first time. But, this was an established builder, house builder, going for donkeys of years, and had a fantastic track record of providing very well constructed development. So, my nephew bought with some confidence there. But look, this happens in England too. This could be a same scenario, but where the developer has no track record, and the developer disappears with your purchase funds before you're able to move in.
You make some excellent points there, Peter, especially in the case of your nephew, because at least he could see this company's previous work, at the very least, that they've done this time and time again. So please, to everybody out there, please do not hand over your money to somebody who hasn't got a track record. And, they may well be legitimate, but it's just very difficult to tell when there's no track record. And I suppose the argument is, well, everybody has to start somewhere. And that's true. But I think when you're handing over, if you haven't got money to burn, just make sure you're handing it over to people that have been doing this for a while and have a proven track record. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And just, if you feel that you need to do this or you want to do this, and see if there's any way in which you can perhaps insure your transaction.
Yeah.
It's possible that you can take insurance out to insure certain transactions. I mean, outright risky transactions will not be available for assurance, or there won't be any available assurance products for those things. But things like buying properties and stuff like that, you should be able to obtain, some sort of insurance to actually insure your transaction. And you should do that through your trusted solicitors.
Yeah, absolutely. Just moving on to some different types. I've personally been seeing a lot about, I don't know how much experience you've seen recently in this, because it feels fairly new, but there's a lot of cryptocurrency, which, to be honest with you, I don't fully understand. I have to be honest. I'm not sure anyone does, but there's a lot of those scams going around. A lot.
Oh yeah. And again, we've had clients who have invested in crypto, and they can't get their money back. There's one particular client. This was earlier on this year, perhaps as recent as the summer of this year, had a portfolio of £250,000.
Wow.
In cryptocurrency. And he kept on contacting the institution, or the company, I should say, to because he wanted to liquidate that portfolio and realize the cash. And they kept on saying to him, put more money in, put more money in, put more money in. And he said, no, I want to take all my money out. And that company, I wouldn't say collapsed. Well, I suppose they collapsed, because we were instructed. And when we got involved and we issued a petition to wind the company up, when the company was eventually wound up, there was just nothing there. You couldn't find any individuals. There was no, because it's all cryptocurrency. So, there's no physical,
it's not a tangible
bank
object.
account.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's no tangible assets there to put your hands on. And of course, this particular individual, this organizer, was laughing at all these investors, and he was tucked up, nestled somewhere in Southeast Asia.
Wow. And never found.
Never found. I bet he's never come to this country before. But yet, all these unsuspecting victims had all come from England and Wales. And, we're talking about millions of pounds here that was lost, in cryptocurrency. Yeah. Look, these organizers will always find a product or a scheme to offer unsuspecting investors to part with their hard-earned or cash inherited, or however they got that, their cash. There's always someone there who wants to relieve you of it.
Very true. Yeah, absolutely. And before we round off the episode, Peter, is there any other types that we've not covered that you've come across in your time?
I've come across wine.
Oh, yeah.
I've come across hotels. We've been very instrumental in hotels. I've come across wine, hotels, student accommodation.
In what sense, with student accommodation, investing in student accommodation that doesn't exist, or what would be the scam there?
The scam is, we are converting, say, an old office block in a university town or university city. We're converting an old office block into a student accommodation. The yield on those rooms, if you buy a particular room for say £50,000, you can rent that room out for say £5,000 per year. So you are getting a 10% on your money. And of course, these are students, that you're going to get paid because these students are funded.
Yeah.
And so, investors pile into propositions like that only to realize that particular construction did not complete. Wow. And so they don't get their money. And so the money is lost. The company goes into a statutory insolvency procedure. An insolvency practitioner is appointed and will let investors know, sorry, there are no monies to be returned to you. You've lost your money. And this is very, very common.
Wow. I mean, it's important to highlight yet again for people to do their due diligence. We won't go into that in this episode because we did cover that really extensively in episode 3. So do go and check that out if you want to get a proper idea of what that means. We also have a blog post on what due diligence would entail as well. So check that out on our website. But Peter, this has been, I think, my favorite episode so far.
Oh, really?
Yeah, definitely. Just learning about how much you've come across, and that you've come across every single one of these types of scams, and how many different types there are out there that people should be clued up on if they can. I've personally found it incredibly insightful. So thank you very much.
You're more than welcome, Sarah.
So that's it for this episode. It was more of a bite-sized episode, but we hope that you enjoyed it and that you got lots of information out of it. And stay tuned because we'll be having another one next week.
Thank you for listening to the Insolvency and Law podcast. If you require additional guidance on any of the topics we covered today, visit the Resource Centre at our website, www.insolvencyandlaw.co.uk, or call us now on 020 7504 1300.